This is a response video. We're going to quickly show you a couple of things. We're going to respond to Warren Redlich. I think I'm saying it right. That he was an Arcimoto bear for a bit, and now he seems to be changing to be a bull. And so we'll discuss that a bit, and we'll go through his video. This is literally all in fun.
Yes, and if you'd like to see Warren on the show, hit like and subscribe. Let's see if we can get to like 1,000 likes on this thing or something. If we can get 1,000 likes, we can go put that out and tweet it to Warren and say, "Come on, we got people that want to hear this conversation go down."
So Warren Redlich, he decided to change his mind on FUV. And in fact, he wrote a tweet, which I responded to, visiting Arcimoto facilities today and getting extended experience driving their FUV. Thanks to Nardo Polo, that's the CEO, and Jesse for showing me around. The upside potential is huge and stock is massively undervalued in my opinion. Video is coming. I bought stock recently. By the way, small position. He only spent $3,000 just to be upfront. He has it in his video. We'll include a link somewhere above and below. I responded to him because a few months back, he was very negative on FUV and Arcimoto. I wrote quite the change in heart from you from a few months back. And so he responded, which I do like people who change their mind. It's okay to change your mind. I put more thought into it. I see it now. Definitely a hard road ahead, but I like the team and I see where it could go. Video coming next week. Anyone who doesn't know that Warren Redlich's YouTube, he's big on Tesla. Go ahead and check him out. He's pretty famous about Tesla, so you guys probably know him. But this is us covering and responding to his video, his bearish side and his bullish side.
So we saw multiple Arcimotos, and a lot of people are excited about this. I was going to talk about Arcimoto. I'm going to say flatly, I was disappointed. I hoped for better. I took notes right after and emailed myself my notes. It is fun to drive. When you get out in the right situation, it's fun to drive. They didn't really have a great environment for driving it for fun. It was at a parking lot where you could only drive slow, and you got out to a road, you go straight, make a U-turn, go straight, make a U-turn and come back. So it wasn't really a great environment for driving it for fun. But when you're driving it, yeah, I can see that this is a fun thing to drive. With that said, I was badly disappointed by what I saw. One of the first things I would say is basically the fundamental problem that I see with Arcimoto is what I would call the user interface. And this is basically the user interface here. You've got the right grip. You, like a motorcycle, you accelerate like that.
Well, let's respond to this because you also had a problem with the user interface and you thought it was fun to drive too.
This is the video when I was researching what other people's first rides were. This is one of them that I spent a lot of time like analyzing and thinking, and I respect this guy. He's got a good insight. He comes at things from a different angle. So I was really interested to see what he had to say. A lot of what he said, I felt exactly the same on a first ride. He brought up a couple of good points. And I think after more thought, if he just gave it 2-3 days more of thought, I don't think the video would have been as bearish. When you first ride this thing, you're expecting it to be like a car. But once you get it in your head that you're actually driving a bike, you're just much more forgiving about it. And I think that's what it sounds like he was going through as well.
He says both things. He says it's fun, and then he says he's really bearish. So let's see why.
And then when you stop the vehicle, you've got to put it in park, which is one of the chiclet buttons down here. And you got to put it in neutral over here. And maybe there was one other thing you got to, it's like too much to do. Don't make it so hard for me to use. And then it's awkward getting in and out of the vehicle. It's not as easy as I thought to get in and out. You have to sort of step over the center, you have to step over to get in. Not that it was that hard, but it was harder than I expected. And then, you know, I did like the seat belts. It's got these cross seat belts. There were things I did like about it. It does feel like it goes fast. Kat, who was also there, she felt like she didn't feel safe at speed. I got up to 50 miles an hour. I felt safe. I mean, I haven't heard stories of them rolling. I think it's a pretty safe, you know, it's not as safe as being in a Tesla, but it felt like it was fun. It definitely felt like it could go fast. The user interface were simplified. I think get it down to $9,000 average selling price. Would you be impressed? That would be a lot better. Yes. I mean, if the steering was easier and it wasn't so complicated to use, I don't know why it's so complicated. It seems so obvious to me that they should be using an iPad like a tablet computer to do all the functions instead of having all these chiclet buttons. Let me pull this up again. You see all these little chiclet buttons at the bottom here, the center of the bottom of this picture here. You see all the controls by this grip. There's controls by...
He's talking again about the chiclet buttons and putting an iPad there. And you specifically said the iPad would not work.
You will not see anything on an iPad during the day. You will not. And you will definitely crash trying to set your blinker or set an air conditioning thing if you got to hit a touch screen. Even he said it. He had one quick test drive around the track in a loop. So what your expectations are in that is way different than if you're in traffic with people everywhere. I don't think he said anything about the mirrors because he didn't have a need to look at the mirrors because he's on the track. So it wasn't a fair test of the Arcimoto. And to be fair too, he is also creating a competitor to it-esque. So he's going to be a little bit more skeptical because he's looking at what he's improved on it. But no, an iPad would not work on that vehicle. In order for Arcimoto to get that to $9,000, they have to sell so many of those vehicles. That's not a realistic question to even ask.
First of all, well, 9,000 today, impossible. I think even with the factory, I think they're aiming for 15,000, maybe 12,000. I think I heard, but to 9,000. I mean,
that's more than half the price. I mean, they got to make something.
It's gonna be tough to get it that low. So I wonder if he was giving it a fair assessment, like you said, because maybe he's biased towards trying to build a $2,000 competitor to the FUV. And at least in this video, next video he changes his mind a little bit. But I'm just saying, if we're going over both videos, he might be a little bit biased. And the fact that he got 10 minutes on it, an hour on it, without going on the road like you did. In your video, you're like smiling the whole way.
No, listen, it's fun as hell. And if someone gave that to me, I would drive it every chance I get. But I don't know that I would actually spend the money on that.
You wouldn't spend 20 grand, but would you spend it at 12,000, the 10,000?
Well, it depends. If there was a tax incentive or something like that, I might. But even then, it would only be like absolute, like my second or my third vehicle that I take out for fun.
What's the use case for this? Is this just replacing golf carts? This isn't like a daily commuter. I don't think this is something that you're going to drive instead of a car. And also it's wider at the wheels. The front wheels stick out and they're wider. Like my pod car that we're working on is going to be 36 inches wide, 3 feet wide. I think these are more like 48 inches or 4 feet wide. So this is, I want to make it narrower. There's aerodynamic reasons for that. There's a bunch of reasons for that. I think having the 4 wheels makes it a better platform. So I think that's just going to be better.
I don't know. It's kind of misleading because it's more a competitor to the platform too.
The weird thing about comparing things to other things that exist is that your thing doesn't exist. You can't say my thing is going to be super awesome and $2,000. It's like, dude, I can say that all day long. He doesn't actually have the prototype yet. He doesn't even have orders for the thing. So it's a big fallacy. It's a big fallacy.
It's fair to say that this is what we're working on. It's fair to say like this is the goals that we're trying to hit with this product.
That is fair.
It's a price point. It's this. We're trying to improve on all these things, and we're trying to get rid of these complaints. I can respect that, but it's not a direct comparison because if anything, he'd be competing with the Platform 2, which would be $1,000 price point, a much smaller footprint. So it's not a real comparison. And this was in October. This is October 17th. Like news of the Platform 2 was out. So it's not a fair comparison to compare what you're working on to a vehicle of Arcimoto's that's not even out yet.
Even Arcimoto has 1,000 of these on the road. You know how hard it is to go from 0 to 1,000? The chasm there is so huge that by the time he's ready with his prototype, Arcimoto's either completely succeeded and has 50,000 on the road, or it's completely failed and bankrupt. Like those two black and white scenarios will happen in the next 2-3 years when he even has his first prototype out.
But we'll see. But I haven't built my prototype yet, right? I'm just talking about what I'm trying to do. So, Arcimoto's ahead of me in one thing. They actually have a working vehicle.
At least he admits
a lot
that.
of them.
This is the last bit in the video where he's bearish before we go bullish. So let's just cover this last bit, what he thinks about Arcimoto and why it's not going to succeed. This is interesting.
So I think that covers what I wanted to say about Arcimoto. I'm excited that they're trying. I'm hopeful, that maybe you could consider this their sort of alpha prototype, although they're actually selling them. And, like an $18,000 price point, I was making fun of my Volkswagen Passat earlier, but I paid $18,000 for my Volkswagen Passat. Got a higher top speed. It carries 5 people instead of 2. Carries a lot more room, a lot more cargo, and it'll go 700 miles on the highway where the Arcimoto will go maybe 100. As much as I now think my Passat's a piece of crap compared to my Tesla, the Passat is a much better bargain for $18,000 than an Arcimoto. And if you're going to spend, if they get the price down to $12,000 and you could buy a car for $15,000, really, is it better than a car? The use case is the problem. What's the use case? How big of a market is it? And I don't think the market is that big.
We did talk briefly about it. You think the market is going towards not individuals buying it, which we both agree on. I think it's the deliverator and rental market. And you believe it's going to sort of like a rideshare market, right?
I think what he was just about to say, like what he's making his vehicle for is what Arcimoto's doing. I just don't think it's public yet. I personally believe that is Arcimoto's like ultimate goal, is to get that ride at 25 cents a mile. They're trying to say, how do we get to 25 cents a mile? So Mark is like, why don't we work backwards from 25 cents? How do we get there? We'll make a really small vehicle. Platform 2, $2,000. That means in X number of trips in a year, it would pay for itself. And then it just becomes this cash machine.
I agree with you on the long term. And in fact, we're going to include a link to our discussion with Mark from Meyer here. So everyone can see exactly what he says. And that, yes, his long-term vision absolutely is that. I'm more of like, in the next 2 years, how do I 10x my money? But let's go into now he's changed his mind, and Arcimoto apparently can 10x. It went from bankruptcy to 10xing. So let's find out why, Warren.
2 months.
Hey, this is Warren Redlich. I wanted to talk about Arcimoto. I had the pleasure of visiting Arcimoto in Eugene, Oregon. I was invited up by the CEO, Mark Frohnmeyer. That's Mark right there. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. They have an interesting electric vehicle company. I'm excited about them. I think they have a lot of good prospects, and I have some concerns. The thing that's special about Arcimoto is that they have a small electric vehicle that's designed for 1 or 2 people. It's not quite, if those who follow me know I'm into this concept of the pod car. My pod car design is significantly smaller than the Arcimoto EV. The Arcimoto EV is much wider, about 5 feet wide and about 8 feet long or 9 feet long, I forget, where I'm shooting for 4 feet wide and 6.5 feet long. Mine is designed for only 1 person. Theirs is designed for 2. Theirs has 3 wheels. Mine has 4 wheels. But this is a very interesting concept. And although I have an idea of a pod car, they actually have a vehicle that is actually delivered and people are using it. So mine is fictional and theirs is real.
I do like that he recognizes that part. That does make me happy. Thank you, Warren.
Him saying he's working on a vehicle that's aiming to improve a bunch of things that are in existence and things that don't exist does not negate his criticisms of Arcimoto. I don't think that, I don't know. It seems like it's like a gotcha moment for him, like admitting that he's got that he doesn't have a vehicle yet, but he's saying that. He's saying this is what we're working to try to achieve. This is what our goal is. I don't see anything wrong with that.
The problem is when you're trying to pitch a platform that doesn't exist to say it's better than something else that actually exists. It's sort of like fluff. It's like the Nikola thing. Their platform was better than Tesla's. Their trucks are amazing. Yeah, okay.
Their rental business model is a killer concept that could be very, very successful, generate more revenue in 1 year from renting the vehicle out at certain destinations than you would make from selling the vehicle.
That's my point.
Roadster vehicle they have.
Mark is going to make as many vehicles as possible and put them in as many emerging markets. He is not focused on selling these vehicles at sticker price. I believe he's going to take a loss making these vehicles to get them on the road and get people driving them as a rideshare or a rental market thing and generate money that way. It's going to eliminate his cash flow problem right now, which they have problem generating monthly cash. It's going to bring in some sort of revenue every month. And eventually those vehicles will pay for itself. But I think he's willing to make these machines at a loss and make his money on rentals. And I think way sooner than you think. In other words,
the rental model, he's not hiding that. That's exactly the plan. That's why he's working out all these deals with these places, whatever back end he has, I don't know.
Right.
But this is why he's giving all these units. Basically, he's losing money, giving it to a bunch of places so they can start renting it out. He starts getting them on the road. People start seeing them. People start renting them. Yes, this is his plan. He's not hiding that at all. But your autonomous future thing, that's the part that's
the rideshare.
That's a future that we're not going to have for a long time.
I think that might be what you think publicly, because that's what he's saying publicly. But I think that he is going to pivot at a certain point way sooner than people think and say, we have got this thing ready. We're ready to get into rideshare. We're going to, all those places now that have FUVs and deliverators or whatever that they're using to rent, overnight, he'll do a software update and those cars can drive themselves to your destination.
I agree with you, first of all, that this is going to happen. I'm saying the timing of your prediction of a year or two, it seems bonkers because it's so hard to do even that part of it. It's just so hard.
I don't, number one, I don't think it's as hard, like he's saying, as it is to have the car driving itself on the roads the whole time. I don't think it's going to be everywhere, but I think he's going, because here's the other thing. I don't think he can wait till 2024. This is why the market, we're in that exponential adaptation growth now. It's like a year is like 5 years, of growth. We can experience 5 years of adaptation just because of the way technology is going. So I believe like he's looking at this saying, if we don't get in here now and develop a base and do this at a loss, then there might not be an Arcimoto in the future.
Look, I want this to happen, what you're saying. I actually do want it to happen, but I know how much money he has on the books. We discussed this at length, how much he needs to do the actual factory he's building out, all the equipment. He doesn't have the capital to do what you're saying. Bottom line, he needs to build his factory first to actually make these things so at least enough people can get them in their hands, because he can't even do that right now.
Their rental business model is a killer concept that could be very, very successful, generate more revenue in 1 year from renting the vehicle out at certain destinations than you would make from selling the vehicle. The Roadster vehicle they have costs about $24,000 as they're pricing it, which is less expensive than a Harley trike that typically goes for $30,000. is quiet, drives really well. What stands out to me most about Arcimoto is the market cap. Down at the bottom center here, you see a market cap of $333 million. $333 million market cap. When you compare this to other electric vehicle companies like Lucid Motors at around $70 billion market cap, or Rivian near $100 billion market cap, and you have to ask yourself, wait a minute, I can understand why Lucid or Rivian might be worth more than Arcimoto, but more than 200 times as valuable as a company that's actually producing vehicles, actually has a business model that might work, doesn't really have competition in the same way. I think Arcimoto is undervalued compared to other EV companies that are out there. You see, like Fisker and Faraday Future, which have fictional vehicles, are market caps of over $1 billion, while Arcimoto is only valued at $330 million. The potential for Arcimoto is there to have a much higher market cap in the near future.
Our big thesis when it was like $2 was like, this was a $50 million company. Why is it worth only $50 million? And they're actually producing vehicles. Now he's like, it's $300 million. Fisker's worth a couple of billion and they don't have any vehicles. How is this guy worth $300 million?
He's absolutely right. There's no reason why Rivian or Lucid should have that valuation. It makes no sense.
At this point, just to clarify, Rivian is at $100 billion
that is
market
ridiculous.
cap.
That is ridiculous. I'm 100% in agreement. But just because they're way overvalued, it doesn't mean that Arcimoto is undervalued. It just means that Arcimoto has not gotten on the radar of the people that are buying Rivian and are buying Lucid. The difference is Lucid and Rivian are making vehicles that people immediately understand the use case. See, when you see that truck, you're like, oh, I know what that is. I could see that on the work site. Maybe you can compare it and say, the bed's too small, it's too heavy, but it's still something that's familiar. If Arcimoto came out with a four-wheeled vehicle, they would be at $2 billion tomorrow. It's the three-wheel thing. It's not being clear whether it's a bike or it's a car, or is it kind of in between, that I think people go, they don't really understand it, right? And then when you start thinking about, okay, now it's this thing that I don't really understand. If I don't understand it, who's going to buy these things?
Even Fisker, which makes no vehicles, by the way. You can't buy one, but it's worth $1 billion or $2 billion. But you can say, I can see myself in a truck one day. It's hard to say I can see myself in an Arcimoto one day.
You automatically think about, well, how would I use it? Oh, does it rain a lot by me? Is it cold? Like,
where are my doors?
Certain things. Yeah, I have no doors, or it's a bike more than it is a car. So I got to think about that.
Because any success, it has to be worth over $1 billion.
If he came out in Q1 next year and said, we're doing a pilot program for our rideshare in select areas in San Francisco and New York and Dallas, whatever, we did that. I think that would be a huge catalyst for them, because I do think that everybody knows where Tesla's going, right? Everyone knows that Teslas want to eat Uber's lunch. Everyone knows where Uber's going.
Or Uber announces some sort of agreement or purchase or lease from Arcimoto.
To your point about the deliverators, right? Deliverators are way too expensive for my local Target to buy 5 of them and say, we're going to spend $100,000 to give people something to deliver these packages to these people that they make no money on. Right. But if they had a service that they went to each of these companies like Target, like whatever, and said, we're going to put a bunch of these outside. All you got to do is charge them. You make a little money on the ride share.
Let's say they went to Uber and just made a deal with Uber. We need deliveries, but we need it at a certain price. And only a small vehicle like this might be able to do it.
Yeah. But I could
You can't drive a gas guzzling car, 2,000 pounds to deliver CDs.
Right. No, obviously. Or to deliver groceries. It doesn't
That's how old I am.
sense.
I'm talking about CDs.
Right. Right. All those game cartridges.
Where with Arcimoto, if they make any profit at all, if they have any success at all, they're massively undervalued. Now, what I see is their goal is to get to the point where they're producing 50,000 vehicles a year. If they sell 50,000 vehicles a year at, let's say, a $15,000 average selling price, which is roughly what they're shooting for, that would be a $750 million revenue number. With a 20% margin, that would be roughly $150 million in profit. And that would make a $330 million market cap look silly small. Then you take into account this rental model. And here's how the model works. They go to a destination like Key West, anywhere the tourists go, and you rent out the vehicles for, let's say, $30 an hour. And they're doing this already. It's already working. Scaling it, making it bigger is a challenge. If you figure that each vehicle earns $100 a day in revenue, as in they're rented out for about 3 hours a day, on average over 300 days, you get $30,000 in revenue from a vehicle that costs them maybe $10,000 to build. They would sell it for $15,000. So $30,000 in revenue a year times 10 years, you got a vehicle producing $300,000 in revenue.
I didn't know it was 30,000 approximately if you do these averages. 30,000 a year. Like we discussed, 6 months it's paid off, and now it's all gravy for like 5 years, 10 years.
If they're able to get that rental model working, it's tremendous value. So if you have 1,000 vehicles producing $30,000 a year in revenue, well, that's $30 million. And what if you have 10,000? Then you have $300 million in revenue. And that's very, very high margin revenue because you've got the vehicle. Once you've got the vehicle, you have some operating cost for your rental facility. It's pretty straightforward. This is a big money maker.
See, it's good that he changed his mind. Remember the previous video, just to connect the two videos? He said, I don't see a reason for this to exist, basically.
He was under the same assumption that I was, that they're trying to sell these vehicles at $15,000 a pop.
He's like, who would buy it, right? Who would buy it?
Right. And then that was my question the whole time. Like, who is actually going to buy it? I know people that would buy it, but like, you know, I know people that bought Polarises and like, but that's not good. That's not going to break any market. It's still going to be sort of like a toy vehicle. This is this is a more serious business play.
So I can see that, not that it's going to conquer the entire commuter market, but if you have a world of 300 million Americans and 100 million of them are going to work, and let's say only 1% of Americans who go to work would find this useful and find this to be something that they would do, well, that's a huge market for a company that's hoping to make 50,000 of them a year. Concern is the market big enough for a company making these at scale? Well, if their scale production is 50,000 units a year, it's really easy to find customers at 50,000. If you're trying to make 500,000 or 5 million a year, then you need a product that's going to appeal to a much broader market segment. But the market segment that this appeals to doesn't have to be that big because their scale of production doesn't have to be that high. And if it works, then you build another factory somewhere else, and you build another factory that builds 50,000 a year. So you put one in Europe, you have one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast. But for me, it just comes down to this. When I was looking at Arcimoto, initially my reaction, I have the same concern about Arcimoto, Rivian, Lucid. I have other concerns about Lucid, of course, but the same concern about anybody else who's trying to compete with, who's trying to get into this electric vehicle space. The attitude that investors have is that Tesla showed it's easy. And that's misguided. Tesla showed it's hard. What Tesla did, what SpaceX does, is they innovate with extreme urgency. Go to the Tesla Gigafactory at 8 o'clock on Sunday night, and they're working. You go to Starbase, and they're working. People at Tesla work really hard. People at Elon Musk companies work really hard. They sacrifice work-life balance for work. You may not like it, but that's what they do. Other companies, you go there on a Sunday evening, nothing's happening. It's not clear that any of these companies is really pushing hard to succeed in the same way that Tesla did and Tesla still does.
What he said there is absolutely right, because I don't know, even though I love Arcimoto, I don't know what's going on there on Sunday at 8 p.m. Do you think anyone's there Sunday at 8 p.m.?
Now, yes.
So you're saying Mark Frohmeyer has extreme urgency. And Mark, you should respond to this video below. Are you working Sunday?
Yeah, I'm going to text you, Mark. We're going to text you.
And not tweeting me, Mark. I'm not talking about tweeting here.
Right. And we want to FaceTime and like see where you're at. Hell yeah, I think they're there on a Sunday.
Tesla does innovate with extreme urgency. Warren is right. I bet you I can go to a Tesla factory at 3 a.m. and there are people busting their butt doing it.
I think Mark is taking this really seriously. And I think that there's no way that you go there at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock on a Sunday and there isn't somebody there. Even if it's not from Arcimoto, there's a contractor in there setting something up, whether it's outfitting an area to get the machines in.
They better be building vehicles almost 24/7. When you can't get out even 73 vehicles last quarter? You can't tell the public that's investing in you, hey, we're sorry, we could only get out 73 vehicles because, you know what, we have half days. It's Friday, it's Hawaiian t-shirt day.
That's not going to work. Your number one concern over the next few months is this stock dilution that's inevitable. It's coming. Yeah. So I think this guy in his head saying, every day that I take off, I'm going to have to borrow more money.
I hope so. I hope what you're saying is right. And I do want Mark to actually respond. He watches these videos. I'm going to tweet him this video. He should tell us if I'm wrong. Please let me know and show us a video. This is Sunday. We're working our asses off. Sure. Okay. As retail investors, it'll make us all feel better because I do have a lot of shares. I want him to succeed. This is not that, but I just want to know that he's pushing as hard as Elon pushes his people in order to make the best freaking products they possibly can to make things that we love, right? We love Tesla. We love everything about it. The car, we want to love you.
If they don't, it could be bankruptcy.
That is a great motivator. He might be there just for that simple reason. Okay, let's finish up this video with Warren.
How can you justify valuing Lucid Motors or Rivian at more than 200 times the value of Arcimoto? Arcimoto is delivering vehicles. They're producing vehicles. They have a vehicle that people have driven. I drove it. Now, my initial experience driving an Arcimoto was a little rough. There's a learning curve, but I drove it again in Oregon when I visited. They let me borrow one for the day. And all of a sudden it started to click. The learning curve is there, and hopefully as they improve the vehicle, they'll shrink the learning curve, but it's really only about a day and you get used to driving it.
So your point,
and all of a sudden it becomes really convenient to get around. And honestly, Tesla has a learning curve.
One thing I do like is that he changed his mind. So that was actually good to see people grow. But I do want to know, if he comes on, why did he change his mind? Why did he actually look at Arcimoto again? Was it just a price thing? Did Mark Fromeyer reach out to him? I just want to know a couple of those things.
Well,
so
he was invited.
down.
Yeah, I'd love to figure that out, because he said he was invited down there, right, to Eugene, Oregon. So he went down there and did a trip. Maybe there was things that they spoke about that he's like not talking about publicly, right?
Look, it could fail. I mean, this is an important thing to understand. Any of these companies could fail. I don't think Tesla can fail anymore, but Arcimoto, Rivian, Lucid, all of them have potential to fail. Rivian's got a really big cash pile, so they're protected. I don't think Arcimoto has the same kind of cash pile.
Just to be clear, they have around 30 million, and they're going to need to raise more, as we discussed, 100+ million for their factory.
So far, it seems like they have access to capital if they need it, but just their potential, where they could go. Think about this: a $330 million market cap when Lucid Motors is valued at like 70 billion and Rivian is valued at like 100 billion. It doesn't make sense that this company is valued so low when other companies are valued so much higher.
It does make sense, because they're making bikes and Rivian's making trucks. They're not in competition. Rivian is not. I think it's funny that they're talking about Arcimoto in the same breath as Rivian and Lucid. Like, say what you want about Lucid and say what you want about Rivian. They are a traditional car company, and they're making four-wheeled vehicles that are electrified versions of cars that you already know. Arcimoto is making electrified bikes with 3 wheels that are going after a completely new market that doesn't really exist yet.
They are not in competition. But his other point is that the disparity is kind of massive. It should compress a little bit at some point in the future. Let's say both are a success, the Rivian and Arcimoto. Arcimoto should come closer to probably several billion, while Rivian's, which is totally overvalued, should probably be closer to 50 billion. Right. So I think it's going to compress over the next couple of years. I'd rather be on the side where it compresses up for us as FUV owners as opposed to Rivian owners.
See this, I think this is a hidden gem, and I can't give you financial advice. I don't know your situation. I can just tell you, I saw this when I saw the market cap. I said, wait a minute, this company's way too cheap for its potential. There's a lot of potential for this company to grow insanely. Of course, that disclosure, I bought stock in Arcimoto, so if the stock goes up, at least in theory, I benefit. But I really only benefit if they succeed, because I'm holding the stock until we see.
What is it that you think Warren's thesis was, and why did you want to respond to it?
When he was comparing his vehicle against the real vehicle, I'm like, if I'm going to buy something that's a 3-wheeled vehicle right now, that's an EV, Arcimoto is really the only one I could buy. Name me another one.
But you could buy 4-wheel electric vehicles.
We're saying small compact EVs that might be used for delivering, like I believe, a ride share, fine, autonomy at some point. All of those things need smaller, compact vehicles. And Arcimoto is literally the only company pursuing this type of thing, while everybody else like Rivian and Fisker and all these other guys are pursuing trucks and big cars and SUVs.
Right.
So they're hitting a different niche market. And I felt like he totally missed that the first time around. And the second time, I think he got it. So I'm back on your side, Warren, baby.
He unsubscribed, Warren, just so you know, and then he subscribed again. So you didn't double your subscribers. He unsubscribed.
So if we were to have you on, which you should come on and talk to us, but we would talk further about our bull case, especially yours, about the autonomy part, because he didn't even cover that. He didn't even cover that.
What I would love to talk to Warren about would be, first of all, to discuss my bull thesis that they're going to announce at some point that they are purely a rideshare company, and that's their main play for whether it's 2 years from now, 3 years from now. That's where they're focused on. And if he agrees, how does that affect your bull case? I'd love to just have that back and forth.
Well, the second thing is I do want his price target. In his whole video, by the way, he never actually gave a price target. He always said the upside is big.
Right.
Rivian is this much money, but because he has a Tesla price target of like 15,000 or something, some crazy number, right?
Right.
So I would like him to sit down and do his analysis for Arcimoto on our channel and tell us what his price target is.
Let's run the numbers, Warren. Come on. Guys, help us get this video to 1,000 likes so we can go after Warren and get him on the show so we can put his numbers to the test, put his bull case to the test, and find out what's what.
This was all in fun. We're not trying to start some sort of Twitter war or YouTube war here. This is literally all in fun.